All right, so let's get back into this. So now we're going to talk about the levels of nature and the self from a traditional psychological viewpoint, in the Sufi viewpoint, the Islamic philosophical or Gnostic viewpoint. So basically, the human being is comprised of like four levels. We're made of clay. Like the Quran says, I have made you from clay, which are minerals, earth, water, fire, and air. Then we're also a combination of plant life, which gives us nutrition, growth, and reproductive functions. And we're also animalistic, which gives us perception and motivation. But our human level is a divine spirit, a sense of cognition. And in anthropology, we also understand this is the ability to have language. And this may be an interesting point as we go further into this. Is this a language component which makes humanity distinctive from other animals? Abdu'l-Baha, who is pictured here, came up with a traditional explanation, and very briefly put, he gave a commentary on Quran. In the Quran, there's these verses regarding uh, Eastern Roman Empire had been defeated, but then they will come back and be victorious again. And this is a commentary on that notion in the Quran. Here Abdu'l-Baha explains that there are different levels of being. Room signifies the stages of the soul and the states thereof, its degrees, its elevation and diminution, its ascent and its fall. So you're always going to see this up and down movement that's going on. These stages are described by Abdu'l-Baha as consisting of the following. This is, here I'm quoting the work of Mujib Momin, who is an English scholar and highly respected Baha'i. Um, the mineral soul, which is static in nature and does not develop. The vegetative soul, the features of which are that it grows and develops, and the animal soul, which senses its environment. Then the fourth is the human soul, the rational soul within which arise the powers of the human being, the outer and inner senses, knowledge, sciences, arts, and wisdom. It is also the place where dark passions and earthly failings appear. Okay, we're going to stop there. But we know that we're going to start with the first level, which is basically the mineral level, the mineral cycle. All this, what Abdu'l-Baha is saying also matches up with what all the other Sufis are saying, and those inspired by divine wisdom school, Gnostic school of philosophy. What you see here is, we have basically the three areas like mind, heart, and gut. Then we put this into like the elements of air, water, earth, fire, and the humors, moisture, coldness, dryness, and heat. When you combine, heat and moisture, you get air. When you combine moisture and coldness, you get water. When you combine coldness and dryness, you get earth. When you combine dryness and heat, you get fire. And in fire, you have, symbolically speaking, understanding and sight, and the earth, feeling. In water, you have imagination and taste and touch. And in the air is intellect, perceiving, and reason. And these are like, the natural temperaments that compose our elemental bodies. You know, this is like the popular rendition of the enneagram these days is to put things into these 9 types, and these are what gives us those different 9 types, the different combinations of these elements and humors. This is taken from Layla Bakhtiar's um, teachings from the Naqshbandi tradition. White is the integration of all colors, pure and unstained before individuation. Black is symbolic of individuation and the remotest aspect from the origination. 4 in geometry reflects the conceptual configuration of universal soul. Manifests as the active qualities of nature, hot, cold, wet, and dry, and passive qualities of matter, fire, water, air, and earth. It has a color symbolism which is taken from the Greek tradition, color symbolism of red, fire, yellow, air, green, water, blue, earth. So, what is red? Red symbolizes fire and vital spirit, and we'll get to this vital spirit later on. It's active and expansive and soluble. It represents morning and spring and childhood. Then it's interesting in here that they have like the four stages of life, which also are very similar to the Hindu philosophy of the four stages of life. And it's also interesting in like, in modern psychological understandings of things, you could see the work of Erik Erikson being represented in a way in the same uh, kind of representation. So moving on to yellow, which complements blue. Air is it's air, and it's hot and wet, and it represents contemplation, and it's active and expansive and soluble. It is noon, it is summer, it is youth. Green, which complements red, it's water. It's superior soul, passive, contractive, and soluble. It's evening, it's fall, it's maturity. Then we have blue, and this is the earth, and it's an inferior soul, and it's cold and dry and passive, contractive, and insoluble. It's the end of cycles, it's night, it's winter, it's old age. And this is, the representation from another book by Layla Bakhtir, sorry about that, which represents this, and it's taken from Greek philosophy, which is, you can see how this all works together. And this is the traditional Greek philosophical rendition of it. You can see the colors are the same. But the most important thing to notice here is the triangular symbols, which represent air and fire and earth and water. So when we combine these, we get eventually to the Star of David, which is this guy. Whoops. Star of David right here. Now, that's what we moderns know about this symbol, is it's the Star of David. The Star of David didn't actually become part of Jewish symbolism in terms of like nationalism till very late. It was not part of Jewish tradition. It was part of this, this Gnostic school, and it entered into Jewish tradition through the study of Kabbalah, which is Jewish Gnosticism. It actually originates, the Star of David symbol actually originates in ancient Armenia. You can find it on Armenian structures dating back thousands of years, actually. So this symbolism is also incorporated into Shaky thought. Shaky thought is the precursor in the school out of which the Bab and Baha'u'llah grew out of. This is from the book by Henry Corbin, Tempo and Contemplation. Here it's talking about Karam Khan's interpretation of the Shaky symbols. It's no different than what the Bab wrote about or Baha'u'llah referenced in his letters to people. But the color white, it represents the world of intelligence and the angel Seraphiel. And the color yellow, the world of the spirit and Michael. And the color red, the world of nature and Gabriel. And the color green, the world of soul and Azrael. And these are the four pillars of the cosmic throne of mercy or God. So you get different modalities: fire, which is the very nature of being; air, which is the exemplary image; water, which is its matter; earth, which is its body. And then the elements descend, and then our project is to reascend up the ladder of being. Now this is a page from Stephen Lambden's work on color symbolism. You can see in the different realms of God, like Hahut is the divine ipsity, God's essential existence, and Lahut is like divinity, and like that's where the divine names get their origination, and it's represented the color white, and Jabarut is yellow, and Malakut is green, and Nasut is red, and these are all taken from Shaky tradition. However, there is one thing that's wrong here, is that it looks like either Brown miscopied something, or I doubt it was Lambden miscopying something, but the color symbolism does not match up. Fire is white, air is yellow, earth is green, water is red. So what's probably going on here, is, well, in traditional Shaky color symbolism of the four elements, fire is red and it represents being or wujud. Air is yellow and it represents imaginal existence, mythal. Water is white and it's like matter. Earth is green and it's Well, it's green in this shaky realm called Hercalia, but black in our world, which is referenced as Nasut. And it represents the body, Jizad, Jism. The brown diagram has fire for white and air, yellow, earth, green, water, red. So you can see what's happened. This couple colors just got flipped around. The traditional Sufi rendering, which is like I said, it's taken from Greek philosophy. Fire is red, air is yellow, water is green, earth is blue. So what does this give us? What are these modes of being, these different combinations of humors and elements? Well, in plant mode, plant existence level of being, we get vital energies. And the vital source in the heart is our arteries, and the arteries enter the liver, which gives us veins, and that energy gets transformed in the brain into nervous energy. So the vital energies and minerals give us natural dispositions, the popular personality type of the enneagram. So it's important to remember that there are three organs, there are three different vital energies, and this becomes important for practitioners of yoga, for practitioners of Qigong in the Chinese system, and it becomes important for practitioners of Sufism and the movements of Sufism that go along with meditation and chanting. All these combine to regulate vital energies. And you can see this represented in different writings of Baha'u'llah, like La'itib, the tablet on medicine, which is traditional medicine, this kind of Gnostic medicine, not like modern science, scientific medicine. So just to briefly quote, something on these vital energies from Baha'u'llah. This is from one of his alchemical treatises, here translated by Lambden. Know furthermore, O wayfarer, that they, past alchemists, have named this secret, the alchemical process, task, Haiwani, which means transmutational, which is vitalistic, regenerative. For this there are two reasons. Firstly, since that which exists is something living, by virtue of its soul, spirit, and body. Such is also found in the Philosopher's Stone. And they thus came to make use of the expression transmutational, which is vital transformation, regenerative. The other reason is related to the fact that the basis of this alchemical work depends on purified oil. And since oil, blood, is related to the animal, it hath been designated this particular name. It may not actually be blood. My editorial comment here. Moving on. And as for their having named it inferior, this is by virtue of the fact that three reality things and three elements exist in the atmosphere of the world of existence. This is the great pillar. And after the manifestation of its pillars in the world of being, it becomes something exteriorized or concrete. Now, as regards the referring of the name the Philosopher's Stone to this entity, thing, the reason for this is in view of the fact that the Philosopher's Stone, by virtue of the spiritual power latent within it, is capable of effecting the removal of iron, and this upright pillar, the Philosopher's Stone, furthermore displaces and transforms all natural bodies through its spiritual might and lordly power. All right, we're going to get into some things later on. I think if you come back to this quote, after we've gotten into those things become a lot more clear, and this mystical, very abstract stuff he's talking about here becomes a lot more clear. So now we're getting into what it is to be an animal. So animal is to perceive things and to be motivated, like a lion is out in the bush and it sees some game and it goes and eats the game. It perceives the game and is motivated to go get the game. And it's also an attraction to pleasure and avoidance of pain. And there are two kinds of senses, the external senses like hearing, smell, taste. Internal senses, which are perceptions and impressions. There's also consciousness. Then in motivation, you have attraction to pleasure, avoidance of pain, and willpower, free will, what we call these. These are all related into this. Then we have, what are these internal senses? We have common sense representations, which are sensible and rational. Then we have an imagination, which gives us an intuition and reason. Then imagination in traditional psychology is broken down into psychical perception, what things we see in dreams. Then, dreams are created by the intellect. But what is the intellect? It's the cognitive system, it's the mind, it's akal, practical intellect and cognitive intellect. Practical intellect, is like practical. This is, if you know the difference between faire and savoir in French, it's the same thing. So, then you get, you become aware of things, and then you take action on those things. So you have 4 stages of acquiring the cognitive intellect. You have potential intellect, the self thinks nothing, but it is prepared to think. Then you habitual intellect, which is actualizing the preparedness, knowing and understanding things. Then we have the active part, which the self no longer needs matter, concerns with intellectual demonstrations, and acquired 3 stages: deliberation, conscience, and conclusions. Then we go to the acquired, which is, as you acquire knowledge, then you implement that knowledge. And here Bakhtiar says, every conceptual form potentially contained in the intellect becomes apparent to it like the face of a person in a mirror held before them. Oh, that's Tusi. Bakhtiar is quoting Tusi there. So there's a process that we undergo. We become aware of things, then we can either ignore those things or we can take action on those things. And that action is the active intellect, the active intelligence. But what is understanding? Understanding has subcategories. It's reason, discourse, penetration, sagacity, judgment, understanding, free will, the consequences of knowing. Wow. Imagination is another path to the positive. When the self seeks the truth by contemplation, it refers to the cognitive intellect. Then having found the positive, it proceeds to free will, and this is what I'm talking about. It's a process. Then when free will acts, the positive, it becomes the active intellect, because we're actively seeking out the positive. So then we have a bunch of, we have this sort of diagram, and this is the diagram which also reveals the balance, al-mizan, in the Quran. It's the balance. You have the mind controls, the heart and the liver, your attraction to pleasure in what's known as nafs or liver, the gut. Then you have avoiding harm in the heart, your behavior, Then you also have like collective protections, which are in the gut. Then individual protections, which are in the heart. But the self is basically this combination of cognition and perception and motivation. The human self is the spirit or cognition. It's vegetal self, which are, the vital energies, and it's also an animal self, which is perceptions and motivations. There's a further delineation within Abdu'l-Baha's rendering of who we are, of different stages of the self. And basically starting off with our base self, the commanding self, then the blaming self, the inspired self, the satisfied self, the consenting self, and the consent-given self, then the purified self. Now, Abdu'l-Baha, we left off, at the human soul, the rational soul, within which arise the powers of the human being, the outer and inner senses, knowledge, sciences, arts, and wisdom. It is also the place where dark passions and earthly failings appear. The human soul has the following stages. The commanding soul. The soul that commands to evil is preoccupied with the trivialities of the world and is infatuated with evil and ephemeral desires. The blaming soul, which becomes aware of the depths of its degradation, of its remoteness from its true goal. It awakes to a perception of its state, is filled with regret, and blames itself for the depths of perversity and error to which it has sunk. The inspired soul, as it rises from its lowly condition, the soul comes to understand those things that kept it abased and those things which led it to its elevation. It becomes averse to those things that perish and to incline towards those things that endure. It is termed the inspired soul, for it is inspired as to that which on the one hand leads to deprivation and on the other to righteousness. Then the assured soul, that is the stage at which the soul is remembrance of its Lord and sees the signs of God in the creation. As a result, it is assured in its faith. Its turmoil and unrest is calmed. It has quenched its thirst, soothed its torment. It has changed its darkness to light and unloaded its burdens. The accepting soul reaches a station of submission and contentment, leaving behind its searching and neediness. It entrusts its affairs to God and is content with whatever God may decree for it. This is a happiness that is not followed by sadness. There remains no will, no rest, no motion, no destiny, nor any fate except in God. The accepted soul, in this state all-encompassing blessings and mercy reach it, insofar it has risen and left behind its passions, and accepted the decree of its Lord. It becomes accepted in the sight of God, and in its state of nothingness it is approved by its Creator. The perfect soul, here it is characterized by divine perfection and comprised of godly attributes. It thus becomes the focal point of inspiration and the dawning place for the divine effulgences. Then on top of that, we have the soul of the kingdom of God. Here the soul confirms in its reality the profession of divine unity and establishes in its essence the sign of detachment. It attains to everlasting life and eternal living. It takes pleasure from delights that like of which no eye has seen nor any ear heard. And that's a key phrase. It takes pleasure from delights that like of which no eye has seen nor any ear heard. The soul of the realm of the divine command. This is the station far above the understanding of the minds of men, for this station is created out of the elements of power, authority, sovereignty, omnipotence, and freedom, and nothing that has limitations or pluralities has any resemblance to it. Here the soul becomes aware of the secrets of hidden and invisible realities that is the ultimate goal in the world of creation. The divine soul, the soul of the realm of primal manifestation. Lahut. It is the universal reality which brings together all of the revealed divine realities, the primal point from which appear all things and to which they revert. From it there appears plurality through manifestation and illumination, and it becomes divided, dispersed, and manifold, and radiates. This station and the soul are completely and forever beyond the reach of human beings. Wow. In relation to his commentary on the overthrow of Rome, Al-Dubaha says it means in this context that as the human soul ascends stage by stage, it overthrows the conditions of the lower stage and as it goes to attain the higher stage. And this is a hard to see diagram that I need to make better, but this lays out in a little way according to the realms of being, Nasut, Malakut, Jabarut, and Lahut, where the souls are. And we can see, once again, we're talking about the commanding soul, which are emotions and behavior, kalb and nafs. Then the blaming soul, which is mind, cognition, akal, which becomes inspired. Then the soul transforms these lower souls into a more contented, just, and assured soul. Then we get into the accepting and accepted and perfected souls. And above that are realms which seem to be above our comprehension or abilities. So, this gives us the self, the point. Again, the Natuk, we are unity, but we are fragmented in our unity. There are 6 levels of the soul according to Bakhtiar and the Naqshbandi tradition. Spiritual, 2 levels of psychology, and physiological, which are the sources of energy. The 5th level is cognitive, and the 6th is ethical. So here, for instance, we're looking at Akal realm, which has wisdom, it's consciousness, it's the physical organ, the brain, which has nerves. It has cognition and intellect, and that is divine spirit. Then we have, out here in the 6th level, we have courage is a manifestation of the heart and pre-consciousness, and the physical organ is the heart, and it's behavioral, and it's avoidance of pain, and it's also self-preservation. But then in our guts, we get temperance and the unconscious. And the liver is the physical organ called the gut, and its veins, and it's affective and it's emotional. And it attracts to pleasure, and it also is collective preservation. But when we preserve all these things, when we come into balance and centeredness at the center, we would see this triangle here where we have temperance and wisdom and courage, which manifests this new thing, this justice. This justice, or the mizan, the balance. It's really the balance, to being a balanced, centered, whole person. And we're going to take a break.